The first thing I always do is to take a very good background history. I want to know how well they're functioning. Then I want to know a little bit about their education, and I want to know about their jobs and about how their epilepsy affects them, so that I can get an idea about what their memory should be like. And then we arrange for their memory to be assessed, and that will be done by one of my assistants, and it will take a couple of hours. In order to assess memory functioning, we use standardized tests. These are tests that are very clearly developed to assess memory function. So they might include, for example, your ability to recall a story, or your ability to learn new material, or your ability to remember things that you've seen visually, or remember things that you've heard verbally. And we'll do a combination of tests, and that will give us some very clear information about how well your memory is working. But it'll also look at our expectations about how well your memory should have been working had you not had epilepsy. And then we can compare and contrast those results, and we can say where their strengths and weaknesses are, which parts of their memory have been affected, and also some strategies that they might be able to use, make that memory be less of a problem for them. My next job is to actually think about what strategies we can provide you with. The good news is that generally people's intellect hasn't been affected by their epilepsy. So that gives us the opportunity to get people to think smarter. So first of all, try to get people to minimize their reliance on their memory. If we replaced their desire to remember things by their desire to organize themselves, that will help. So for example, I really encourage people to use diaries, either paper versions or electronic versions, so they can get into a good habits of looking at their diary every day and reminding themselves of what they need to do. And of course we now have the luxury of mobile phones and apps that actually remind people to do things at various times. So we can think about how can we set up an individual's phone to remind them A, to take their medication, or B, that they've got an appointment to go to. So this is much more about thinking smarter and organising yourself better so you don't have to rely on your memory. Other important ways of operating in the world is trying to think about how we can increase the probability of us remembering something. So, for example, I always encourage people to carry notebooks around. If you've got something that you want to remember, make a note of it in your book. You should always have notebooks by your telephone. So if you want to remember a conversation, make notes. That way, you're actually trying to remember information in two ways. You're listening to what's being said, and you're making notes about it. So you're establishing ways of actually storing that information. And the more ways you store information, the more ways you're likely to be able to retrieve it. There's been some very interesting research out of Cambridge that if you want to remember an event, the best thing to do is to take photographs of that event. And we know that photographs are quite interesting in that they actually enhance our opportunity to recall events. If you look at photographs, they have a way of cueing memories, which is much greater than any other medium. Just because your memory has been affected, it doesn't mean that your intellect has been affected. And so you can actually start to think, well, if I can't rely on my memory, how can I think smarter and operate on the world?